Hi, I'm Tony. I'm here today to show you through building a strainer assembly, otherwise known as a box strut. It's going to be a single one today, but they can be a multiples of a corner with two coming off them, but today we're just building a single box strut. Generally they're at the end of the line of the fencing where you're coming onto a gateway or the end of a fence line. But generally speaking, you'll need two posts around about the 150mm to 200mm in diameter. Depending on the soil type, you can get away with a 1.8 metre if it's very hard, gravelly, clay type of materials, and solid, you'll get away with the 1.8s, but in the softer grounds, you'll need to go up to a 2.1 and get it into the ground as far as possible, 900mm preferably into the ground. And then you'll also need a rail. The rail here today it's around about the 150mm rail at 2.1 metres. The rail can be made of anything. You can use water pipe, tubing, anything solid that's going to, it's just to brace the two posts apart and keep them apart and keep it all solid. But here today we're using pine. Traditionally, back in the early days, everything was made of jarrah, and you'll still see a lot of those ones constructed today, 150 years plus, still in place. They're very solid. But first of all, once you've got the materials, make sure you've got all your safety gear, gloves, safety glasses, sun protection. When you're using the machinery, make sure you've got hearing aids, protection, and also making sure that when you're going out, especially in isolation on your own, letting somebody know where you are and your whereabouts and what time you're expected back. So firstly, we'll start on, once you've located your where you're putting the box strut, and you've made way for your gate, give clearance for your gateway, whether that be a 3 metre or whatever, allow for that. Put your first post in, and then we'll get started. Rightio, it's pretty easy digging here, but for the exercise we'll use an auger to put the hole in. So we'll get that and we'll make a start on that. Rightio, we've dug the hole. Now we just need to measure the depth to make sure it's getting that 900mm into the ground with 1200mm of the post outside of the ground. So we'll do that, measure it all up, and then we'll go from there. With the post, there's going to be a slightly fatter end and a skinnier end to every post. So pick the fat end to go into the ground. It'll just make it harder to get out once it's in. So you go from the skinny end and then measure down 1200 is where you're going to be out of the ground, and then just measure back from that, from the thick end back to that, to see what we've got. 950mm there. Each post is going to be slightly a little bit different, so you'll have to measure every one to find the depth of the hole. So we've got another 300mm still to go there. So we'll keep digging down and get it out, get the loose material that's fallen back in. Rightio, we should be very close there. We'll just get the final measurement, hopefully. and that's spot on. You're looking at the ground level, not the top of any dirt that's come out, but the actual ground level. That hole is spot on now. It's 950 mil. So now we'll get the post and get it back in the ground before that hole fills up with water. And remember the fat end into the ground. Rightio. So there we have it. We've got our mark where we marked on the post, 1200 out of the ground. And that's nicely solid in there. Keep it nice and straight. If you want to use a spirit level, you can. Not essential, but you can certainly if you want to get it spot on. Right, we just backfill it now. Next phase is to measure out with your top rail. Once again, there is a fat end and a skinny end, but it's not essential which way you go, but it always looks better with the fat end closer to the actual main post. So you measure that out, put it in line with your fence line where you're going, make sure it's all nice and straight. And then just mark it a little bit off so you're allowing where the center of the post is going to go, and allow that, if it's 150, that is at least 75, 80 mils off the end of that post so it's nice and straight. Rightio, so the next stage of the project is to put our bracing post up and get it pinned in. So what I'm going to do is measure each end. The other end was 130 mil. This one is 110 mil. So what you do is halve that. So this one would become 55 on the end of that post, and then 130, so it'd be 65 on this one. So measure it in line, keep it in line with your other post and your fence line. Measure down 65 here. So the idea is once you've got it pinned and it's up in place, that the top of the rail should get fairly flush with the top of the post, each of the posts. So do the same for the other one. Right, so this one was 110, so this will end up being 55 mil. Just put a mark there where you're going to drill the hole. So these are our pins that are going to go in the end of each of the top rail and at the top of the other rail posts. So you need to find a drill bit that's going to be big enough diameter to fit the pin in. It just has to be just slightly a little bit bigger, so it's not too tight but not too loose either. And you need to go, the depth of the hole is half of whatever the pin. You can have longer pins in this if you want a bit more to play with, but yeah, make sure you only go half the depth of the pin, otherwise you're going to lose your pin in one of the posts. So find your mark. From there, basically, now I've just got to drill the holes in the end of these, just mark them, and at the end of each one of them, drill the posts. Now for the other end of the post, once again, half the depth of the pin. So now we're just going to bang the two pins. We've done each of the holes into the end of the railing. So we're just going to put the pins in top of each of the posts, getting them ready for put the rail on and constructing it. Right, that's in far enough and halfway. So now we're just going to put that post in the ground, put our rail on, and then we'll backfill that post once it's all secured in place. The rail's on, but we've still got a little bit of a gap. It still needs to be knocked over so it's nice and flush with the other posts. So I'm going to get a helper. Michelle's going to come and give us a hand. She's just going to brace this post as it's nice and freshly and it's fairly loose. She's going to brace it while I knock it across to embed it in the post. All right, how's that looking, Michelle? All good? Alrighty, thank you very much for that. So now we're ready to backfill this post. So now we're ready for the next stage, and that's to put the wire brace in place, get all that ready. And then I'll show you how to strain all that up and we'll go through the steps of doing that. I've got the wires ready to go off the spinning jenny. I'm going to put a staple at the top of the inline post and a staple down the bottom of the strainer post. The wire needs to be from the top of your inline post to pull it back to your straining point. It'll lock it all back in once we strain it all together. So it's got to come from the top of your inline post down to the bottom of the strainer post. So we'll get those staples in place. Just bang the staples in halfway. You've got to get 2 sets of wires through there, and then just go to the other end on the bottom of the strainer post and do the same up this end, close to the ground as you can. And then from there, we run 2 sets of wires through. Having a spinning jenny makes it nice and easy. So what we need to do now is just you've got two sets of wire in there, bring it back to about halfway there, pack that in, and then we'll cut the wire we don't need. So they're going to come back together. Right, the first bit is to put a loop in one end of the wire. There's no, go as fancy as you like on this. There's no real fancy method of doing it, but as fancy as you like. But basically, just getting a loop into it. Right, once you've got your loop in that one end, just bring up as much slack as you can. Through there, poke your wire through the loop that you made, keeping it as tight as you possibly can. It doesn't have to be spot on, but the tighter you get it, the less tension you'll have to take up at the end of the day. And then do the same on this end. putting a loop so they're joined together. And then cutting off any excess wire you don't need any longer. Right, we've got the bracing mechanism. And another point just worth noting is when you, with your two wires, make sure they're not overlapping and crossing each other. It'll just create a weak point where they overlap once you've got the tension on there. This high tensile stuff wire is pretty good, but yeah, you just don't want to force any weak points in the wire. So from there, basically, it's always best if you've got livestock on one side and it's a boundary fence on the other, you want this to be ending up on the boundary side, away from the livestock, but that's not always possible, and they're pretty safe around livestock. There's not going to be any injury there, so you're right. So from there, you just find the middle of your box strut, and then let's just see, we're going the opposite direction, so we need to go this way because we'll end up on this side. So you just continue to wind this together to create the tension. This has been handed down through the generations after generations. Ever since fences have been created, you'll see these type of tension mechanism. Rightio, that's pretty well as tight as you want it. To keep it all in place and nice and neat, I just put a Tech screw using one of the holes on your start picket. Right, and there you have it, all securely in. So from there, we just bang the staples in. If, like I say, if you need to backfill around the post and anywhere it's pulled itself in, do that. But yeah. There you have it. You're all finished with your box strut, ready to put the remainder of your fence up and then strain back to your strainer post. It's all nice and solid. It's going to take any strain, that being 900 mil in plus into the ground. Even in these conditions, will hold tight for many years to come. So, thank you. Hopefully you've learnt something from the video. And yeah, best of luck with your fencing.